It's day 93 of the Gulf disaster. Here to speak with us this morning is Edward Overton, a professor emeritus of environmental studies at LSU. Good morning, Ed. You tried to retire, and of course there's been an oil spill in your backyard. Let's talk about some of the environmental impacts here, because we've been focusing so much on the capping, but even if this cap holds or the next static kill attempt works, there's still a lot of oil in the water. How much are we talking about? What's the time frame for this cleanup?
Well, if you assume there was 50 to 60,000 barrels a day going in for the last 87 days, of course, some of that is come ashore. A lot of it is weathered. It's changed. As oil moves through the environment, of course, it doesn't stay the same. It changes. You may lose as much as 50% on evaporation. But taking all that into consideration, there's still an awful lot of oil meandering around in the Gulf of Mexico. It's being spilled in an area where there's not really strong ocean currents taking it onshore or in any given direction. So it meanders around, and ever so often globs wash ashore both on the Florida, Alabama, Mississippi beaches, as well as the coastal marshes along Louisiana's coastline.
Well, let's talk about what's under the water, because that's almost as important as what we can see on the surface. You are one of the few people who has actually analyzed the dispersed oil under the water. How much oil do you think exists in the water column, and what kind of a danger does that pose to the coast?
Well, that is a very difficult number to estimate, but it's a significant quantity. The good news is in all of this dispersed oil at depth is it looks to be at very low concentrations, down in the low part per million, which is exactly what you try to do when you disperse oil. The problem is, of course, we're dispersing it into an environment which we've never done before, and into an environment which we know very little about. It's generally a mystery what even the whole ecology of deep water oceans, we don't know a lot about them because they're very difficult to study. So we're putting oil in there, but clearly the two potential impacts are the toxicity of the oil, and oil can have toxicity at part per million levels, as well as the ability to use up oxygen in those low depths and cause any kind of dead zone. So the good news so far is that we haven't really detected through a number of cruises any really alarming areas of low-level oxygen depletion. So I think that is some encouraging news that this hasn't caused an ecological catastrophe yet.
Absolutely.
That we know of.
Let's talk a little bit about the dispersants here, because you have sounded a somewhat less alarmist note. There have been a lot of scientists who are particularly worried about Corexit and the use of Corexit down at the well site. Underwater dispersants are sort of an experiment that's being tried here. Are you concerned about the dispersants?
Well, I think we all are concerned. I mean, nobody likes to use dispersants. I mean, it's literally the lesser of two evils. So the reason you use them at depth is to keep more oil off the surface where it can cause extensive damage, and damage that we know about. It keeps it offshore, and as well as it helps protect the safety of the response workers. Right above the well, there's literally a small city of boats and ships that are being used in the relief wells and the capture and cleanup technology, and dispersion helps cut down the exposure for these workers to these fumes that are coming from the oil. So nobody likes to use it. It's just a question of which is the lesser of two evils. We've got a horrible situation. We had a really horrible situation before the oil was stopped. We still got a bad situation, and it's going to take several months before we get out of the response mode and into a long-term recovery mode.
Well, Ed Overton of LSU, I thank you for getting up especially early for us today.